Jake Martinez stood by the big window of his ship and looked out at the stars. They moved slowly past him like tiny lights in the dark. He was the commander of the New Horizon, a huge ship carrying thousands of people to build a new home on a distant planet. This would be the 15th world where humans would live among the stars. Jake was 45 years old now. His hair had some gray in it, and his face showed lines from years of making hard choices. He had been in space for most of his adult life. First as a young scientist studying alien life, then as a ship captain, and now as the leader of this colony. Mission. The journey to their new world would take 2 more years. The ship was quiet during the night shift. Most of the colonists were sleeping in their small rooms. Jake liked these peaceful moments when he could think without anyone asking him questions or needing his help with problems. He often came to this observation deck to watch the stars and remember his past. 23 years ago, Jake had been very different. He was young and excited about studying alien creatures on a research station near a planet called Kepler 442b. He had worked alone for months, collecting samples and writing reports about strange life forms. The isolation had been hard on him. He was far from Earth and far from other humans. During those lonely months, Jake had strange dreams. In these dreams, someone would visit him in his small bedroom on the research station. The visitor was beautiful, but not human. She had long silver hair and skin that seemed to glow with soft light. Her eyes were deep blue like the ocean on Earth. She would sit on his bed and talk to him about the stars and life and things he did not understand. The dreams felt more real than his waking life. When he touched her hand in the dream, he could feel her warmth. When she spoke, her voice was like music. She told him her name was Lyra and that she came from somewhere far away. She said she was lonely too, and that finding him made her happy. Jake would wake up from these dreams feeling peaceful and less alone. During the day, he would tell himself they were just his mind creating comfort because he missed human contact. But at night, he would hope she would visit again. And she always did. When his research mission ended and he returned to civilization, the dreams stopped. Jake tried to forget about them. He told himself they were hallucinations caused by stress and isolation. He never told anyone about Lyra or the nights they spent talking in his dreams. As years passed, he almost convinced himself they had never happened. Now, standing on the observation deck of the New Horizon, Jake was thinking about those old dreams again. He did not know why. Maybe it was because they were traveling to unknown, space where anything might be possible. A soft sound interrupted his thoughts. It was the communication system alerting him to an incoming message. Jake looked at the display and saw that someone was trying to contact them on a very old diplomatic frequency that nobody used anymore. The message was coming from empty space, not from any planet or ship they could detect. Jake pressed the button to accept the transmission. The air in front of him began to shimmer and glow. Slowly, a 3-dimensional image appeared. Jake felt his heart stop beating for a moment. Standing before him, as real as if she were in the room, was Lyra. She was exactly as he remembered from his dreams, but now she was 8 feet tall and more magnificent than his memory had captured. Her skin shifted between silver and pale blue like water reflecting moonlight. Her hair moved as if floating in a gentle breeze that did not exist. Her ancient eyes looked directly into his. "Do you remember me, human?" she asked. Her voice was the same musical sound from his dreams. "Years ago, you shared your bed with me." Jake could not speak. His mouth opened, but no words came out. All those dreams he had convinced himself were fake suddenly felt completely real again. The loneliness, the conversations, the gentle touch of her hand, the way she made him feel. Less alone in the vast emptiness of space, Lyra smiled at his reaction. It was a sad smile full of joy and sorrow mixed together. I see that you do remember. I am glad. I was not certain the connection would remain strong after so many years. You're real, Jake finally managed to say. His voice sounded strange and hoarse. I am as real as you are, though perhaps in a different way, Lyra replied. I exist between the spaces, you understand? Your people call it dreaming, but for my kind, it is simply another place to be. Jake looked around quickly to make sure no one else was on the observation deck. Who are you? What are you? Why did you visit me all those years ago? I am Lyra of the Ethereal Collective. My people are very old, older than most of the stars you see outside your window. We have watched over this galaxy for millions of years, protecting younger species from dangers they could not understand or fight alone. She moved closer to him, though she was only a projection of light and energy. We chose your species, Jake Martinez. We chose humans to take our place as guardians of this galaxy. The visits I made to you and others like you were the beginning of that choice. Others like me? Jake asked. Yes. Across your scattered worlds, there are dozens of humans who shared similar connections with my people. You were selected not by accident, but because you possess the qualities needed to inherit our responsibility. Jake felt dizzy. This was too much to understand all at once. What responsibility? What are you talking about? Lyra's image flickered slightly, as if she were having trouble maintaining the connection across the vast distance of space. My people are dying, Jake, not from disease or war, but from the nature of what we are. We exist partially outside of normal time and space, and that existence is becoming impossible to maintain. Before we fade completely, we must pass our guardianship to another species. And you chose humans? We chose humans because you alone among all the species we have observed possess the right combination of strength and compassion, intelligence and humility, courage and wisdom. Most importantly, you have the capacity to love without reservation, even across the boundaries of species and understanding. Jake remembered the feelings he had experienced during those dream visits so long ago. He had cared for this being he barely understood, felt protective of her loneliness, wanted to comfort her in ways that made no logical sense. But there is danger approaching, Lyra continued. Ancient enemies of my people have detected the power transfer beginning. They seek to destroy humanity before you can fully inherit our abilities and responsibilities. Your species faces its greatest test, and it is coming very soon. The transmission began to fade. Lyra's image became less solid, more transparent. I must go now. Maintaining this connection across dimensions requires energy I can barely spare. But I will come to you properly soon, in physical form. There is much you must learn and little time to learn it. Wait, Jake called out, but she was already disappearing. Remember, Jake Martinez. Her voice echoed as the last traces of her image vanished. What we shared was real. What we shared was the beginning of everything. The observation deck fell. Silent again. Jake stood alone among the stars, but now everything had changed. The peaceful journey to establish a new colony had become something much more significant and dangerous. He looked out at the vast darkness of space and wondered what other surprises were waiting out there in the unknown. 3 days passed after Lyra's message, and Jake could barely sleep or eat. He kept the encounter secret from his crew, but he found himself constantly checking the communication systems for another transmission. His second-in-command, Captain Lisa Rodriguez, noticed his strange behavior during their daily meetings. "Commander, are you feeling well?" Lisa asked after Jake gave the same order twice in 5 minutes. "You seem distracted lately." Jake forced himself to focus. "I'm fine, Captain. Just thinking about our mission parameters." Lisa did not look convinced, but she nodded and returned to her duties. Jake knew he could not keep acting strangely without raising more questions. The crew trusted him to lead them safely to their new world, and he could not let personal concerns affect his judgment. On the fourth night, Jake was in his private quarters reading reports when the air in his room began to shimmer. This time, Lyra did not appear as a projection. Instead, she stepped out of what looked like a shadow in the corner, becoming solid and real in his small living space. Jake jumped up from his desk chair, knocking over his coffee cup. The liquid spilled across his papers, but he ignored it. Lyra stood before him in physical form, no longer just light and energy. She was even more magnificent in person, her presence filling the room with a sense of ancient wisdom and power. "Do not be afraid," she said gently. "I am truly here now, though it requires great effort for my kind to maintain physical form in your dimension." Jake reached out slowly and touched her hand. Her skin was warm and felt completely real. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Many things your species considers impossible are simply things you do not yet understand," Lyra replied. She moved to his small couch and sat down gracefully. Her tall form seemed to bend the light around her in subtle ways. "May I sit with you as we did in the old days? There is much I must explain." Jake sat beside her, his mind racing with questions. Up close, he could see that Lyra looked tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. Her luminous skin seemed dimmer than in his memories, and her ancient eyes held a sadness that made his heart ache. "Tell me about your people," Jake said. "Tell me about the ethereals." Lyra was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "We were young once, like your species is now. We lived on planets and built cities and fought wars over resources and territory, but that was millions of years ago. As we evolved, we learned to exist partially outside normal space and time. This gave us great power, but also great responsibility." She gestured toward the window, where stars were visible in the darkness. "Every star system you see out there contains life in some form. Most of it is simple, but many worlds have developed intelligent species. For eons, we have protected these younger civilizations from cosmic threats they could not face alone." "What kind of threats?" Jake asked. "Entities that consume entire solar systems for energy. Machines left behind by dead civilizations that destroy everything they encounter. Invasions from dimensions where life evolved differently and sees all other forms of existence as diseases to be eliminated." Lyra's voice grew heavy with memory. "We have fought wars that lasted thousands of years to protect species that never knew we existed." Jake tried to imagine the scope of what she was describing. "And now you want us to take over this job?" "We do not want anything, Jake Martinez. We are dying. Our existence between dimensions is becoming impossible to maintain. The cosmic forces that allow us to live partially outside reality are changing in ways we cannot control or stop. Within a few of your years, the last of my people will fade completely from existence." Lyra turned to face him directly. "But before we go, we must ensure the galaxy continues to have protectors. We have observed many species over the millennia, searching for ones with the right qualities to inherit our role. Most are too aggressive and would use our power to conquer rather than protect. Others are too passive and would not fight when fighting becomes necessary. And humans are different. Humans are unique in ways that even you do not fully understand yet," Lyra said with something like pride in her voice. "You have the courage to fight impossible odds when protecting something you care about. You have the wisdom to show mercy to defeated enemies. Most importantly, you have an instinct to share power rather than hoard it." Jake thought about human history, which was full of wars and cruelty. "I think you might be seeing us through rose-colored glasses. We've done plenty of terrible things. Every species has darkness in its past, Jake. What matters is the direction you choose to grow. In the 2 centuries since your people reached the stars, you have made allies with dozens of alien species. You have shared your technology freely, instead of using it for conquest. When the Zephyrian plague threatened to wipe out an entire star system, human medical teams risked their lives to develop a cure and distribute it for free. Lyra reached into what seemed like empty air and pulled out a small crystal that glowed with internal light. She handed it to Jake, and he felt warmth spread through his fingers when he touched it. This contains a fragment of the bond we shared during your isolation years, she explained. The dreams we experienced together were not just comfort for loneliness. They were a test and a preparation. Through our connection, I was able to see into your heart and mind. I found the qualities needed in a guardian: compassion without weakness, strength without cruelty, wisdom without arrogance. Jake stared at the crystal, remembering those dream conversations about life and meaning and the responsibility of intelligence in a vast universe. You said there were others like me, other humans you bonded with. 67 in total, scattered across your colonies and space fleets. Each was chosen carefully after long observation. Each possesses different aspects of the guardian nature your species will need. Lyra's expression grew more serious. But the bonding process also marked you. Our enemies, the Devourers, have ancient ways of detecting ethereal energy. They know that power is being transferred to a new species. The Devourers? Beings from the early days of the universe, who chose a different path than my people did. Where we learned to create and protect, they learned only to consume and destroy. They see the galaxy as nothing but fuel for their hunger. For millions of years, we have been the primary force standing between them and the complete destruction of all life. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. And now they're coming for us? They have already begun moving. Their fleets are vast, and their weapons operate on principles that make most galactic technology useless against them. They know that if they can eliminate humanity before the power transfer is complete, the galaxy will be defenseless. Lyra stood up, her form becoming slightly transparent as the effort of maintaining physical presence began to tire her. But they do not understand what they face in your species. The same qualities that make humans suitable guardians also make you formidable enemies when you fight to protect others. What happens now? Jake asked, also standing. Now you must begin to awaken to your inherited abilities. The process will be different for each human who is bonded with my people, but for you, it will likely manifest as an expanded awareness first. You will begin to sense things across greater distances, understand patterns in ways that seem impossible. Lyra moved toward the shadows where she had appeared. I must return to my people now. This physical manifestation is draining my energy faster than I anticipated, but I will come back soon with others of my kind. You and the other bonded humans must be prepared quickly. Wait, Jake called out. How will I know what to do? How will I learn to use these abilities? Lyra paused at the edge of the shadow. Trust your instincts, Jake Martinez. The connection we shared implanted more knowledge than you realize. When the time comes, you will know what to do. She smiled at him one last time. And remember, you are not alone in this. Your entire species has the potential for guardianship, not just the 67 who were directly bonded. What we gave you will spread to others when the need is great enough. She stepped into the shadow and disappeared, leaving Jake alone in his quarters, with only the glowing crystal as proof that the encounter had been real. Jake sat back down and held the crystal up to the light. As he watched, images began to form in its depths, star maps showing the locations of other bonded humans, glimpses of alien threats moving through deep space, and something else that made his breath catch. He could sense Lisa Rodriguez in her. Quarters 3 decks away, could feel her dreams as she slept, not intruding on her privacy, but simply aware of her presence in a way that had never happened before. When he concentrated, he could sense other crew members throughout the ship, their emotions and general thoughts creating a soft background hum in his mind. The awakening had begun, and with it, humanity's greatest challenge was approaching from the darkness between the stars. Jake's new abilities grew stronger each day. At first, he could only sense the emotions of people nearby, like a whisper at the edge of his hearing. But within a week, he was picking up thoughts and feelings from crew members throughout the entire ship. The experience was overwhelming until he learned to filter the mental noise and focus on specific individuals when needed. During a routine navigation meeting, Jake suddenly felt a sharp spike of alarm from Lisa Rodriguez before she even spoke. She was studying a sensor display with a frown on her face. "Commander, we're detecting some unusual energy readings about 2 light years ahead of us," Lisa reported. "The patterns don't match anything in our databases." Jake walked over to look at the display, but he already knew what they would find. The crystal Lyra had given him was warm in his pocket, and his enhanced awareness was picking up something massive and hostile moving through space toward them. "Change course immediately," Jake ordered. "Take us 15 degrees off our current heading." "Sir, that will add 3 weeks to our journey time," the navigation officer protested. The energy readings could just be a natural phenomenon. Before Jake could respond, the ship's emergency alarms began blaring. The lights dimmed as massive. Energy beams passed close enough to their previous course to disrupt their power systems. If they had not changed direction, those beams would have cut straight through the new horizon. "Red alert," Jake called out calmly. "All hands to battle stations. Lisa, get me a visual on whatever just shot at us." The main screen flickered to life, showing a view of space ahead of them. At first, there seemed to be nothing there except stars. Then the space itself began to twist and bend, revealing ships that had been hiding using technology that warped light around them. Devourer vessels were unlike anything in human experience. They looked like they were made from crystallized darkness, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Strange geometric patterns covered their hulls, patterns that hurt to look at directly because they seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could process. "My God," Lisa whispered, "what are those things?" Jake felt the crystal in his pocket grow hot. Somehow, he understood that these were the advanced scouts of the Devourer fleet, sent to eliminate the human colony ship before it could reach its destination. They were testing humanity's defenses and capabilities. "All weapons online," Jake commanded. "Target the lead vessel." The New Horizons laser cannons and missile systems engaged, sending a barrage of firepower toward the alien ships. The weapons struck their targets, but seemed to have no effect. The energy beams were absorbed harmlessly, and the missiles exploded against barriers that became visible only when hit. One of the Devourer ships returned fire. Its weapon was unlike anything Jake had seen before, a beam of pure entropy that aged whatever it touched. Where it struck the New Horizons hull, the metal began to rust and decay at an accelerated rate. Jake closed his eyes and reached out with his enhanced senses, trying to understand the enemy vessels better. What he found shocked him. The ships were not just machines, but were partially alive, their organic components existing in the same strange dimensional space that the ethereals used. "Lisa, rotate our shield frequency to match these parameters," Jake said, giving her a series of numbers that came to him from nowhere. He had no idea how he knew them, but the knowledge felt as certain as his own name. Lisa looked confused, but followed his orders. Immediately, the New Horizons' defensive shields began to glow with a different color, and the next entropy beam from the Devourer ships was deflected harmlessly into space across the galaxy. Other humans who had been bonded with ethereals were experiencing their own awakenings. Admiral Lisa Santos felt it first during a staff meeting on Earth's orbital defense platform. She was reviewing fleet deployments when suddenly she could see patterns in the enemy movements that her tactical computers had missed. "They're not attacking randomly," she announced to her surprised staff. There's a coordination to these strikes that suggests a central intelligence. If we position our fleets here, here, and here, we can predict where they'll strike next. On the mining colony of New Texas, engineer Ben Thompson was trying to repair a damaged fusion reactor when the Devourers attacked. As entropy beams struck the colony's power grid, Ben found himself able to manipulate matter at the molecular level, restructuring damaged components with his bare hands in ways that should have been impossible. Dr. Maria Santos, exploring a distant star system in her research vessel, discovered she could communicate instantaneously with other awakened humans across any distance. Her mind reached out and found Jake during the battle, sharing tactical information that helped him understand the Devourer weapons better. But the most remarkable awakening was not happening to the bonded humans alone. Ordinary colonists on the New Horizon, faced with an enemy that threatened their families, began manifesting abilities they never knew they possessed. 8-year-old Tommy Chun was in the ship's school area when a Devourer boarding pod breached the hull nearby. The alien creatures that emerged were nightmarish beings of shadow and hunger, moving through the corridors toward the civilian areas. Tommy somehow managed to create a barrier of solid light that held them back until security teams arrived. In the engine room, maintenance worker Carl Rodriguez found that he could understand the ship's systems in ways that went beyond his training. When the Devourer weapons damaged critical components, Carl was able to repair them by interfacing directly with the machinery using thoughts. Instead of tools, Jake sensed all of this happening throughout the ship as his awareness expanded further. He realized that Lyra had been right about humanity's potential. The abilities were not limited to the 67 bonded individuals, but were spreading to anyone who faced the crisis with courage and determination to protect others. "Sir, more Devourer ships are approaching," Lisa reported. "I count at least 20 vessels, much larger than the scouts we've been fighting." Jake opened his enhanced senses fully, reaching out across space to connect with every awakened human he could find. Maria Santos in her distant research ship, Admiral Lisa Santos coordinating Earth's defenses, Ben Thompson holding together a mining colony under attack, and dozens of others scattered across human space. Through their shared connection, Jake began to coordinate a defense that spanned multiple star systems. Maria's communication abilities allowed instant coordination between human forces that were light years apart. Admiral Santos's tactical prescience guided the positioning of defense fleets. Ben's matter manipulation skills were shared telepathically with other engineers, allowing them to create weapons that could actually harm Devourer vessels. But it was the ordinary humans who provided the real surprise. A cargo pilot named Danny White, hauling supplies between colonies, somehow managed to ram his small freighter through a Devourer battlecruiser by phasing his ship partially out of normal space. A teacher named Susan Lay protected her students by creating a telepathic shield that confused the alien attackers and made them see empty classrooms instead of children. The Devourers had expected to face a young species with primitive weapons and no understanding of multidimensional warfare. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to evolve new capabilities with each engagement. Jake felt the tide of battle beginning to turn. The New Horizons weapons, modified using knowledge that came from his connection to Lyra and the other awakened humans, began to penetrate Devourer shields. The alien ships started to retreat, but not before sending a final message that chilled Jake to his core. The transmission was not in any language, but Jake understood it through his enhanced awareness. It was a call for reinforcements, a signal that would bring the main Devourer fleet to human space. The real war was about to begin. As the immediate threat withdrew, Jake gathered his senior staff to brief them on what they faced. He could no longer keep the truth secret from his crew. They needed to understand that they were not just colonists traveling to a new world, but the advanced guard of humanity's transformation into something greater. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible," Jake began. "But after what we've just experienced, I think you'll find it easier to believe than you might have yesterday." Lisa looked around at the other officers, all of whom had witnessed abilities they could not explain during the battle. "Commander, I think we're ready to hear whatever you have to tell us." Jake pulled out Lyra's crystal, which was now glowing brightly enough to illuminate the entire briefing room. "We are not alone in the universe, and we never have been. For millions of years, an ancient species called the Ethereals has protected this galaxy from threats that would destroy all life. Now they are dying, and they have chosen humanity to replace them as guardians." He went on to explain about the bonding process, the awakening abilities, and the approaching war with the Devourers. As he spoke, Jake realized that his crew was not shocked or frightened by the revelation. Instead, they seemed relieved to finally understand what was happening to them and their species. "So what do we do now?" Lisa asked. Jake looked out at the stars, where he could sense other battles taking place as awakened humans across the galaxy fought to protect their worlds and their people. The main Devourer fleet arrived at Earth 3 weeks later, emerging from the dark space between dimensions like a plague of living shadows. Their ships numbered in the thousands, each one larger than the biggest human space station. The sight of them approaching humanity's homeworld sent waves of terror across every human colony and settlement. Jake felt the collective fear of his species through his enhanced connection to other awakened humans. He was still aboard the New Horizon, now racing back toward Earth at maximum speed, but they would not arrive in time to help with the initial defense. The responsibility for protecting humanity's birthworld fell to Admiral Lisa Santos and the Earth Defense Fleet. Through Maria Santos's communication link, Jake could observe the battle as it unfolded. The human fleet was outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but they were no longer the same species that had fought the Devourer scouts weeks earlier. Every human who had shown awakened abilities during the first attacks had been working frantically to understand and develop their new powers. Admiral Santos stood on the bridge of her flagship, the EDS Humanity, and felt the tactical situation unfold in her enhanced awareness like a 3-dimensional chess game. She could see the Devourer fleet's weaknesses, the gaps in their formation, the predictable patterns of their attack strategies. "All ships follow my lead," she broadcast to the human fleet. "We're going to hit them where they don't expect it." Instead of engaging the main Devourer force directly, Santos led the human ships in a complex maneuver that took advantage of the enemy's overconfidence. The Devourers expected humanity to try to protect Earth by placing their fleet between the planet and the attackers. Instead, the human ships spread out in a wide net and began striking at the edges of the Devourer formation. Ben Townsend, now aboard a military transport ship heading for Earth, used his matter manipulation abilities to modify the fleet's weapons in real time. Working through the telepathic connection that linked all awakened humans, he guided other engineers in creating ammunition that could exist partially outside normal space, allowing human weapons to bypass Devourer shields entirely. But the real surprise came from ordinary humans who had not been directly bonded with Ethereals. As the Devourer fleet approached Earth, billions of people on the planet below began to demonstrate abilities that no one knew they possessed. Children in schools across the world spontaneously created protective barriers around their classrooms. Factory workers found they could merge their consciousness with manufacturing equipment, turning entire industrial complexes into weapons production facilities that operated at impossible speeds. Artists and musicians discovered they could create works of beauty so powerful that they disrupted Devourer technology, which was designed to consume and destroy, but had no defense against pure creativity. Jake watched through his connection to Maria as the tide of battle began to shift. The Devourers had technology far superior to anything humans possessed. But they were facing something they had never encountered before. A species that became stronger when threatened, that grew more capable when protecting something they loved. A devourer battleship the size of a small moon moved toward Earth's orbital defense platforms. Its entropy cannons began charging for a shot that would age the entire planet by millions of years and seconds. But before it could fire, something unprecedented happened. Every human on Earth, awakened and ordinary alike, joined their consciousness together in a moment of shared determination. 10 billion minds focused on a single purpose: protecting their world and everyone on it. The collective will of humanity manifested as a shield of pure energy that surrounded the entire planet. When the Devourer's entropy beam struck the shield, it was not absorbed or deflected. Instead, it was transformed into something else entirely. New life, new growth, new possibilities. Where the beam touched Earth's atmosphere, flowers began to bloom in space, their roots extending into dimensions that the Devourers used for their weapons. Jake felt tears running down his face as he witnessed what his species was becoming. Through his connection to Lyra, he understood that this was beyond anything the Ethereals had ever achieved. They had been powerful guardians, but they had always remained separate from the species they protected. Humans were different. They did not just fight for other species. They invited them to join in the defense. Alien refugees who had fled to Earth from Devourer attacks found themselves included in humanity's protective embrace. Zephyrian scientists working alongside human researchers suddenly discovered they could access the same enhanced abilities. Vorthan merchants who had set up trading posts in human space began manifesting powers they had never known were possible. Devourer fleet, faced with an enemy that grew stronger instead of weaker under attack, began to retreat. But Jake sensed that this was not a defeat for them. Through the quantum entanglement bonds that linked all awakened humans, he could feel the ancient intelligence behind the Devourer forces reassessing its strategy. "They're not giving up," Jake announced to his crew aboard the New Horizon. "They're adapting. This was just their first test of our defenses." Lisa Rodriguez, now showing awakened abilities of her own, nodded grimly. "I can sense it too. Something much worse is coming." Through Maria's communication link, Jake reached out to connect with Lyra. The ethereal was weaker than before, her people fading faster as the power transfer to humanity accelerated, but she was still able to respond to his call. "You have done well, Jake Martinez," Lyra's voice whispered across the dimensional barriers between them. "Your species has passed the first test, but the Devourers have realized something that changes everything." "What have they realized?" "That humanity is not just inheriting our role as guardians. You are evolving into something new, something that could potentially heal the ancient wound that created the Devourers in the first place." Jake felt a chill of understanding. "They're not just trying to stop us from becoming guardians. They're trying to stop us from saving them." Yes, the Devourers were not always creatures of pure hunger and destruction. Millions of years ago, they were a species much like yours, but they chose a different path when faced with cosmic isolation. Instead of reaching out to connect with other life, they turned inward and began consuming everything around them to fill the emptiness inside themselves. Through his enhanced awareness, Jake began to understand the true scope of what humanity faced. The Devourers were not evil by nature, but were trapped in a cycle of consumption that had lasted so long they had forgotten any other way to exist. They attacked not out of malice, but out of a terror so deep they could not even recognize it anymore. "Can they be saved?" Jake asked. "We tried for millions of years and failed," Lyra replied. "But we never had what your species possesses. The instinct to include rather than exclude, to heal rather than simply defeat. If any species in the galaxy's history could break the Devourer's cycle of hunger, it would be humanity." Jake felt the weight of this revelation settle on his shoulders. It was one thing to fight an enemy, even a vastly superior one. It was another entirely to try to save an enemy from itself while it was actively trying to destroy you. The Devourers. Main consciousness is coming, Lyra warned. Not just their fleet, but the core entity that has guided them for eons. It will try to corrupt your species the way theirs was corrupted, to turn your protective instincts into predatory ones. How do we fight something like that? The same way you have fought everything else since your awakening began. Together, with courage and compassion, and the unshakable belief that every sentient being deserves a chance at redemption. The connection to Lyra faded as her energy was exhausted, leaving Jake alone with the knowledge of what was coming. He looked around at his crew, all of whom had heard the conversation through their shared mental link. "You all heard that," Jake said. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the chance to heal something that has been broken for millions of years." Lisa stepped forward, speaking for the entire crew. "Commander, if there's even a small chance we can save them instead of just defeating them, then that's what we have to try to do. It's what makes us human." Jake nodded, feeling pride and fear in equal measure. Outside the ship's windows, the stars seemed to burn a little brighter, as if the universe itself was holding its breath to see what humanity would choose when faced with its greatest test dot in the depths of space beyond the edge of known reality. Something ancient and hungry felt the change in humanity's intentions. For the first time in millions of years, the core consciousness of the Devourers experienced an emotion it had forgotten existed. Hope dot, and that terrified it more than any weapon ever could. The final confrontation came not as Jake expected. Instead of a massive fleet battle, it began with a single Devourer entity approaching Earth alone. This was not one of their ships, but the core consciousness itself, a being so ancient and powerful that its mere presence warped space around it. Jake had returned to Earth aboard the New Horizon, just in time to witness the entity's arrival. It appeared as a dark star that absorbed light instead of creating it, surrounded by geometric patterns that existed in dimensions human eyes could barely perceive. When it spoke, every awakened human in the solar system heard its voice directly. In their minds, "You would heal us," the entity said, its mental voice carrying the weight of millions of years of pain and hunger. "But healing requires understanding, and understanding requires experiencing what we have experienced. Are you prepared for that, young guardians?" Jake felt the collective response of humanity through his connection to every awakened human across the galaxy. They were afraid, but they were not backing down. Admiral Santos, Ben Thompson, Maria Santos, and thousands of others joined their consciousness with his, creating a network of shared determination that spanned entire star systems. "We are prepared," Jake replied, speaking for his entire species. "Then experience our beginning," the entity commanded Dot suddenly. Jake was no longer on Earth, or even in his own time. Through the Devourer's memories, he experienced the birth of their species billions of years ago. They had been explorers and philosophers, much like humans, driven by curiosity about the universe and their place in it, but they had encountered something in the deep spaces between galaxies that humanity had not yet faced, the crushing realization of cosmic insignificance. They discovered that the universe was vast beyond comprehension, filled with civilizations that rose and fell without leaving any lasting mark. Most species eventually faded into extinction, their achievements forgotten, their struggles meaningless. In the face of entropy and time, faced with this knowledge, the early Devourers had made a choice. Instead of accepting their temporary existence and finding meaning in connection with other life, they decided to try to become permanent by consuming everything around them. They believed that by absorbing other species, other worlds, other stars, they could become large enough and powerful enough to matter in the cosmic scale. But consumption had brought no satisfaction, only greater hunger. The more they devoured, the emptier they felt. Over millions of years, they had forgotten why they started consuming and could only remember the need to continue. They had become addicted to destruction, unable to stop even when they recognized that it brought them no joy. Jake felt the entity's memories flooding through him. Worlds stripped of all life, species driven to extinction, stars drained of their energy until they collapsed into darkness. He experienced the Devourer's growing despair as they realized they had become monsters, but could not find a way to stop being monsters. "Now you understand," the entity said. "We cannot be healed because we do not deserve to be healed. We have destroyed too much, caused too much suffering. The only mercy you can show us is to end our existence quickly." But Jake felt something the entity did not expect, not revulsion or hatred, but compassion. Through his connection to other humans, he felt that same response multiplied across his entire species. They had seen the worst of what the Devourers had done, and they still chose to feel sorry for them rather than condemn them. "You're wrong," Jake said. "You can be healed, but not by trying to fill the emptiness inside you with things from outside. You can only be healed by reconnecting with other life, by choosing to create instead of consume." "Impossible," the entity replied. "We have forgotten how to create. We have forgotten how to connect. We are creatures of hunger now, nothing more." "Then let us remember for you," Jake offered. What happened next had never occurred in the galaxies. History. Instead of fighting the Devourer entity or trying to destroy it, Jake opened his mind completely, sharing not just his own memories, but the collective experiences of humanity. He showed the entity what it felt like to create art, to fall in love, to sacrifice for others, to find joy in simple moments of connection. Other awakened humans joined the sharing. Maria Santos showed the entity the wonder of scientific discovery. Ben Thompson shared the satisfaction of building something with his own hands. Admiral Santos demonstrated the fierce protectiveness that came from defending those who could not defend themselves. But it was the ordinary humans who provided the most powerful healing. Children shared their sense of wonder at seeing stars for the first time. Parents shared the overwhelming love they felt for their offspring. Teachers shared the joy of watching students learn and grow. Artists shared the creative fire that drove them to make beauty from nothing. The Devourer entity recoiled from this flood of positive emotion. "Stop," it pleaded. "This only makes our emptiness more painful. We cannot feel these things anymore." "You can," Jake insisted. "The capacity is still there, buried under millions of years of hunger, but not destroyed. Let us help you remember." Instead of forcing the memories on the entity, Jake invited it to choose. He opened his consciousness like a doorway and waited. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, tentatively, the ancient being reached out and touched one small memory. Jake as a child, looking up at the night sky and feeling wonder at the vastness of space. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The Devourer entity, which had not felt wonder in eons, was flooded with the emotion. Its dark form began to flicker, patterns of light appearing within the shadows for the first time in millions of years. Other Devourer ships throughout the galaxy felt the change in their core consciousness. Some resisted, too corrupted by hunger to accept the possibility of healing. But others began to approach human settlements, not to attack, but to experience the same sharing that their ancient leader was undergoing. The healing was not instant or easy. Many Devourers were too far gone, their capacity for anything but consumption completely destroyed. But others began to remember what they had been before the hunger took them. They shared their own ancient memories of beauty and creation, adding to humanity's understanding of the universe and their place in it. Jake felt Lyra's presence one last time as the full ethereal used the last of her energy to witness humanity's first act as galactic guardians. "You have done something we never thought possible," she whispered across dimensions. "You have not just defeated an ancient enemy, but begun to heal an ancient wound. Will they be all right?" Jake asked, watching as Devourer ships throughout. The galaxy began to change, their dark hulls taking on patterns of light that reflected their crew's rediscovered capacity for hope. "It will take time," Lyra replied. "Some will never fully heal, and some will choose to end their existence rather than continue to struggle with their nature. But others will remember how to live instead of just consume. They will become allies. In protecting the galaxy, perhaps even better guardians than my people ever were, because they understand the consequences of choosing wrongly." Lyra's presence began to fade as the last of the ethereals passed from physical existence into whatever lay beyond. "The galaxy is in good hands, Jake Martinez. Your species has proven worthy, not just of our power, but of our trust." The transformation that followed took years to complete. Some Devourer fleets had to be fought and defeated when they refused to accept healing. Others voluntarily dissolved themselves, their crews choosing non-existence over the struggle to change. But many more began the slow process of learning to create instead of consume. Jake found himself appointed as the first director of galactic relations, coordinating between human space and the former Devourer territories. The New Horizon finally reached its original destination and established the colony as planned. But it became something more. A training center where humans and redeemed Devourers worked together to learn their new role as galactic guardians. Years later, Jake stood once again on an observation deck, watching the stars. But now he was not alone. Beside him stood Zara, a former Devourer who had been among the first to accept healing. Her species had originally been energy beings from a distant galaxy, and in her redeemed form, she appeared as patterns of living light that shifted and danced like aurora. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked, her voice like crystalline chimes. "Your species could have simply destroyed us and taken our resources. Instead, you chose the harder path of healing us." Jake smiled, thinking of all the awakened humans scattered across the galaxy, working alongside former enemies to protect species they had never met. Humans have a saying: we judge ourselves not by how we treat our friends, but by how we treat our enemies. I think we chose correctly. In the depths of space, new threats stirred as they always would. Ancient machines left behind by dead civilizations, cosmic entities that viewed all organic life as disease, invasions from parallel dimensions where evolution had taken darker paths. But now the galaxy had guardians who understood that the goal was not just to defeat such threats, but to heal them when possible and include them in the greater community of life. The stars shone brighter than they had in millions of years. And in the quantum foam between dimensions, the laughter of vanished ethereals echoed with joy at seeing their legacy in suck.